name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, then subscribe, bell notification, thumbs up. I'm sorry if it's gray. I can only film today. And I live in northern Canada. We're just lucky that there's some semblance of white-ish outside. The white-ish stuff is snow, but, you know. Beggars can't be choosers because it's like -40 outside right now, so I'll take that. Yeah, I wanted to tell you about the books that I read this week, but just a slight reminder in case if you don't follow my Instagram, I am heading on some traveling. I am traveling starting January 22nd, and so I will be gone until the second full week of February, basically, is when I'm back. So there won't be any Sunday videos for, I think, 3 Sundays. So there's so 3. Because I fly back on a Saturday evening, so I won't have time to record to put up a Sunday and everything. So, so there'll be 3 no Sundays, but Tuesday videos should be up as normal. And then I'll figure out how the heck I'm catching up based on how many books I read whilst I'm traveling. But yeah, the books that I did read this week, let's talk about them. They're very cute. He's very manipulative because he knows just how cute he is. Yeah. He's also short, so he likes to be held a lot so he can see where everything is. Because I live in a basement apartment, and, like, all the windows are, like, on the upper half of a wall. And you're, like, half a foot tall on his hind leg, on his legs. Maybe a foot tall on his hind legs. Hmm? What do you see out there? What do you see beyond the great snow? He also doesn't like to go outside because he doesn't like snow. Or the cold. This isn't the world for you. So first off this week, I worked on Shadow Scent by P.M. Freeston. I got to page 277 before I just kind of, I think it was 277. I shouldn't have taken the bookmark out before I was gonna. Yeah, so I got to chapter 35, which is like a good chunk of the way into it. I think there's like a quarter-ish left. I ended up DNFing this, unfortunately. This was not like, oh, this book was atrocious. It was like, I literally said last week, I feel like I'm starting that thing of reading the same books over and over again with just character names substituted, basically. This was the continuation of that happening. So, I'm just reading it and was like, I can't read any more of these books with the same YA structure, with the same, characters, with just like maybe eye colors being different and like whatever. I thought there was going to be a little bit more leaning into like the scents and perfumery of it, but there wasn't. Less use of that and more just like traditional YA structures. If you know that you like those and you're fine with reading those all the time, give it a go. It was actually pretty strong on that point. The cover's also really pretty. I just was not in the mental space of, I couldn't force myself to read the last 80 pages or whatever it was because I'm so tired of reading the same YA book over and over and over and over and over again. So on a prayer, breath, hope, whatever you want to call it, I picked up The Gracier next because I know everyone was saying that's a messed up book and different, and I knew it was a dystopian. So it's like, maybe this will give me something new. And boy, did it deliver on that. So, The Gracier is like Lord of the Flies meets, I don't know, everywhere it's like, they're comparing it to like The Handmaid's Tale, but I don't know if it's just because it's like a sexist dystopian. But I've never read The Handmaid's Tale, so I can't make that comparison. But I think if you've read, like, Wilder Girls, it's a little bit, got a lot of those kind of undertones. A dystopian, set in this world where at the age of 16, the girls are essentially, like, put up for bid, and the men in the town can decide, like, okay, like, I want to marry her, and puts a veil on her. And then all of the girls at that age, for 1 year, are put into the wild, essentially this, like, isolated treehouse village situation, and they have like a year to like purify themselves to get rid of their magic so they can become suitable incubators or wives, whatever you want to call it. And there's like some poachers on the outside that hunt you essentially if you leave, and if you leave and they don't find your body, they punish your remaining family members in the town. So the girls can't really run because they're either going to get caught by the poachers, and if in that situation and the poachers take them, then their bodies aren't found, and then their siblings or their mother or whoever could get punished. And to just reaffirm this right at the beginning, one of the town's women is murdered by her husband because he just basically, she stopped giving birth to babies, she's gone through menopause, and he didn't get a son. So that was his way. It reminds me an awful lot of Salem witch trials in that aspect, for sure. Our main character, I kind of love her. She is in the pack of 16-year-olds, and she has literally spent her entire life trying to make herself as unappealing to the men in town as possible without breaking any, like, rules that would get her entire family punished, right? So, you know, she tries her darndest to be, you know, unfeminine. She's friends with the boy. She doesn't follow by, like, the gender modesty crap. None of that stuff. So she spends her whole life being like, all right, I'm going to make sure so no one wants me. And then someone wants her. So she goes to the grace year, her grace year, which is that 16 year, and immediately things are off. There's this one girl in the camp she would have done well as an SS soldier during the Second World War, is all I can say. But she's very manipulative, and highly has bought into this concept of getting rid of the magic, that we're impure, that we're tainted, that we're, you know, all of the things that the men in her society have told her about devaluing women, she has taken in, accepted, and is now applying that to the whole village of the 16-year-old girls there that are there for a year. So we spend the whole year there, and our main character is not having any of that bull crap. So she becomes very quickly, you know, an other in the community, which she already wasn't really a part of because they all knew she didn't want to be a part of them. They all knew she was actively trying to make sure that no one would want to marry her. So it follows this whole year period where things don't go easy. I wanted to scream so many times, but all of this stuff is challenged. And I feel like it took so many of discussions that we're having today about feminism and the treatment of women and applied it so very well and clearly that you can still see the parallels. I love that we had a large spectrum of women represented in this. Because even if you look over history, we have these rebels who, you know, see the status quo, don't like it, it doesn't fit them, and they spend their whole lives, even if they end up dying because of it, they spend their whole lives trying to be themselves. Not saying, you know, they're not going to buy into that whole, like, I'm worth less because a dude said so. I have value as a person, and I can contribute to things. And then you have these people that have been so brainwashed and manipulated that they buy into it, and they just take it. And then you have another set of people who not only are brainwashed and take it, but they then start helping the men oppose the women that they themselves are a part of because they believed it. That's why you had, you know, women, you know, in the church especially, like, you know, going after, you know, unwed young mothers, or, you know, slut shaming. We still do that nowadays because they've been told through centuries that we should shun the women, even if the men do it. But it's okay if the men do the exact same actions because the men are special. You know, women, we know that they're timid and we have to fix them. So we need to shame them whenever they do something that's bad. So it's so interesting because I've seen all of these different characters and they make you so infuriating. But, like, while I was reading it and I was like, oh God, this is literally that person that I went to school with, or this is literally that person that I know in my real life, or whoever. And it's infuriating, but it was really valid. Like, I like that it show, like, because it's just not that easy of us versus them. Like, a lot of us are with them, you know what I mean? So I loved it. I absolutely loved the ending. The author didn't take the easy way out. She didn't take the cheap way out. She didn't use no, like, kill people and then come back to life tropes. None of that crap. She was honest. I think everyone ended up where they needed to be for the point to come across. I am so curious to see how this is going to be adapted. Elizabeth Banks is supposed to be, I don't know if it's producer or director or both, but Elizabeth Banks, from the actress from, like, The Hunger Games, who is Effie Trinket, she is in charge of adapting this. I'm just concerned. There's a lot of gruesomeness and stuff that's not easy to digest, even as a reader. So I don't know if that's all going to translate well, but I'm also like, if they don't translate that or if they cut it out, I think it would dilute the story as a whole, and I don't know that it would work. So I'm curious / nervous. I am absolutely hopeful, though, especially having a woman kind of in charge of that. I hope that will help for it. Or just, yeah, I'm really, really curious to see where that goes. I understand now the whole flowers kind of embossed everywhere. There's this kind of, like, inner rebellion. I feel like that would be an interesting spin-off to the series because it is a standalone, but there's like kind of like a little hidden rebellion within like the small village that the men don't seem to have noticed. Or if they have, they don't seem to have noticed that it's a group of people, not just like one woman rebelling. So I'd be so curious to have some sort of spin-off in this village, either after what happened in this book or before, how it's all been set up, or how the rebellion itself grew to be what it is and hidden in sight. It'd be very, very interested. So I'm going to keep an eye out for this on sale because I actually really like this cover. I think I like the US more than the UK cover, but I was like okay with both of the covers, I think. So highly recommend. Solid 5 out of 5 stars. Easily my favorite book of the week. Then I picked up Anya and the Dragon by Sofia Pasternak. This, it's a wonderful, I don't know if I would call it a fantasy, to be totally honest. I feel like it's more of a historical fiction, magical realism influences. So, it is our main character Anya, is in this Russian village, and her family is, it never, I think, specifies, but it's very heavily insinuated that the whole village itself is under the Christian denomination, and her family is the only Jewish family in the community. It doesn't seem to be much of a hindrance for her. People in the town still seem to be like, their family's been here for forever. We know these people. She was born here. She's grown up here. Whatever. And right at the beginning, we know the main character's father is currently away doing military fulfillment because the family, everyone in the town was told if your, sons, husbands, whatever, go to the military, essentially for conscription, you will not be required to pay your taxes. So a lot of them, it's kind of a no-brainer. They're living in very rural farm communities in Russia, which are notoriously poor. So her father is in the military, and then all of a sudden the new town tax dude shows up and says, oh, well, it doesn't apply to you though because you're Jewish, so you owe us 500 rubles or something like, some like astronomical amount that like a peasant would take a decade to earn. And they're like, but if you give us your house, then, we'll wipe it clean. And they want to give the house to this dragon slayer family, essentially, that they've welcomed to town because they think there's a dragon roaming around. So that's where the magical realism elements come into it. I'm really pleasantly surprised that they dealt with the anti-Semitism because that's something that I feel like we don't talk an awful lot about. We just like highlight like Germany and the Nazis in World War II. They was crazy. Oh my God, can you believe someone would be that anti-Semitic? And you're like, yes, because historically we were always that anti-Semitic. We just didn't go to that extremes of the spectrum. But I mean, like in history, everywhere centuries we have segregated, isolated, and targeted Jewish communities. And it is actually brought up in here that the main character's grandmother specified that we made a point of staying in this non-Jewish community thinking we would be safer because it's easier to target the Jews when we travel as a whole. When we travel as a town, the town gets burned down and we all get taken out. And there's this kind of story tied into the family line with that. So I thought that was really, really interesting, and I'm glad the author didn't shy away from it, but it is also not like scarring for middle grade children target audience. So I think the message came across really well of like the bad people are the ones that are being anti-Semitic, and that's wrong because these people are just like everyone else. And I liked the kind of lightheartedness almost of having the dragon incorporated and the message again of interacting with the dragons the way that they do. I liked the family of the dragon slayers that kind of came in. They're this big group of people. I just thought it was a really like heartwarming book overall, despite the fact of what the content it deals with, which was pretty impressive. So I think I will definitely pick up the sequel, give it a read whenever it comes out. And my last read of the week was a reread of Descendant of the... This happens every time I pick... I need more pre-order swag in here. I keep my pre-order swag normally in the books if I physically can, so I don't lose them. And this book specifically, I constantly open it and forget, and the character cards fall out all the time. I did a reread of Descendant of the Crane by Joanne He. I asked for some help picking on Instagram, and this was the one with the most votes. We had Joanne He in the TBR and Beyond group, so I've read this book before. She was awesome. I devoured this book. I adamantly want a sequel. I doubt we're gonna get it though, because the publisher just butchered this launch alone. And she has a new series coming out under a different publisher. I think it's supposed to be a duology, starting in 2021. I'm really curious about that. I'm definitely gonna follow it. I'm trash for this cover. I love this entire concept of a not necessarily a matriarchy, but like the main female character is like oldest. So they're like, well, she's next in line then. You know? She may be a woman, whatever, but she's the oldest. That's priority. So that was kind of a nice break for me of after having the sexism of the Grace year, of having that bit of a break. But that's kind of all of the breaks you get. So our main character thinks that her father was murdered, and that's why his reign came to such an abrupt end. She's not under the greatest relationship situation with her mother, who she may or may not think partook in the killing of her father, but she wants to call a trial. And in this world, you kind of submit your case. This, you know, group of beings will decide if you have an actual case, and if so, then they'll take it to court. And when you go to court, they choose who your lawyer will be. So it tries to eliminate the ability for these super rich people to just call bogus trials and have all these super rich, you know, this like entire like lawyer crew behind them, right? So that's her whole premise, but at the same time, her community, her city is being essentially targeted. She can tell people are, you know, making their way towards them and kind of getting rid of people in the way. But those people may be getting help from within her own city, and she has to figure out who it is. Well, she also kind of violates their laws because she sets up who's going to be her lawyer. So there's tons of different things going on in here. A lot of like death, a lot of people lying, and it's the whole thing of like who exactly is lying, who's leaking all this information. We kind of know, but is it 100% him? Who's helping him because he can't be doing it on his own? And then people are like, oh no, I killed the king, no, I killed the king. You know, it's just all kinds of chaos. The ending threw me for a dang loop. I just really want a sequel to this. And it kind of hurts me that we're not going to get one. Like, it hurts my soul an awful lot. I mean, it took like a year plus to get an audiobook for the frickin' thing. But yeah, I'd also actually recommend the audiobook. I didn't hate it, definitely by any means. So, I think it matched, the narrators matched the tones, like their tones and their voices and their aneurysms and everything like that, matched the tone that this book has. So I love the main character. I love the entire cast, really. I love the plot. I love the world. I want more of the world. I want more of the plot. I want more of the characters. Just solid 5 out of 5 star reread. It was one of my favorite reads last year, and it did not disappoint in audiobook format. So those are all the books that I read this week. Let me know in the comment section down below what you read this week, and if you've read any of these, if you have any thoughts, I'd love to know. And I will link all of these books in the description box down below, along with all of my social media. If you follow me, I will follow you back, and I will see you over the course of the next couple weeks on Tuesdays and not on Sundays, but you can follow me on Instagram, and I always update there every day on if I've gotten any reading done, and maybe you'll get some pretty pictures or videos or whatever of like Ontario and Quebec.